Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this online service of Quimper Unitarian Universalist Fellowship, a loving, spirited, and inclusive community. While our physical sanctuary can be found in Port Townsend, Washington, the sanctuary of our values and principles are found in the hearts and minds of curious and creative people located throughout the region, the country, and the world. We're so glad you're with us today. As we prepare for this hour, let us take a few breaths now to settle our minds and enter this hour with our hearts wide open. It is good to be together. Bertram, will you please lead us in our call to community now?
May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be peaceful and at ease. May I be whole. May we be filled with loving kindness. May we be well. May we be filled with loving kindness. May we be well. May we be peaceful and at ease. May we be whole.
The chalice, as a symbol of Unitarian Universalism, arose as a beacon of hope in an atmosphere of tyranny. The chalice arose as a sign of promise that the marginalized would be neither forgotten nor ignored because they are loved and precious in the eyes of us all. This morning, we remember all of the people who have been told explicitly and implicitly that they're less than whole, something less than beloved. So as we each light a chalice in our homes, may we make of our lives a beacon, a symbol of our promise to draw the circle wide, a sign that we will not rest until all means all. Our opening words are an adaptation of words written by Sharon Wiley. We speak so often of brokenness in religious life, but today, let us speak of wholeness. You are welcome here, all of you, every part of you, beautiful just the way you are. Here, you need not be something more or something less. No need for holding back, no hiding. You do not need to change anything about yourself to be welcome here. Your skin, your hair, your belly, your face, your being, all are beautiful just the way they are. You are extraordinary, each and every one of you, different and beautiful in your own unique way. Come, let us enter this sacred hour, open, authentic, and together.
Please join me in singing our opening song, There is a Balm in Gilead. There is a balm in Gilead to heal the wounded soul. There is a balm in Gilead to heal the sin-sick soul. Sometimes I feel discouraged and think my work's in vain. But then the Holy Spirit revives my soul again. There is a balm in Gilead to make the wounded whole. There is a balm in Gilead to heal the sin-sick soul.
Good morning, everyone. Congratulations to all who finished school this week in a most memorable and unique fashion. This Sunday was originally going to be focused on immigrant justice and has rightfully shifted to focusing on racial justice to remain topical and present to the issues of our time. And I actually think that the story I have prepped for today is relevant in a few significant ways. That we cannot assume someone's story, that we must acknowledge our history as well as the present reality for many of us, and we must show up for one another. Our lives are unique in their challenges and their prejudices and their privileges, and in order to really commit to anti-racist work as well as to focus on justice and anti-discrimination for all, we must listen. We must listen to each other's stories and attend to the person at the center of them. And we must learn from them. So today, I have one person's story, and her name is Rama. Rama, wake up! The rooster would crow every morning when we still lived at home. From my warm bed, I listened as Mama prepared breakfast. Bread, yogurt, and juicy red tomatoes from our garden. When I was little, not so long ago, my brother Sami, our friends, and I played on sun-baked soil. We laughed and ran across rocks and sand, free as birds. And at night, when Papa came home from the fields, he would sit for a time under the orange tree and tell the stories of our ancestors. In that not-so-distant memory, we were free. Free to play and free to go to school, free to buy fruit and vegetables from the market, free to laugh and chat and drink tea with the neighbors, always 3 cups. But that was then, and this is now. Back then, Jado, my grandfather, fished. And Papa worked in the fields, and Mama sewed silk scarves for me and my dolls. Wrapped in silk and hugs, I didn't know our lives would soon change forever. But Jado said we weren't really free. If we're not allowed to sing our songs, or dance our dances, or pray our prayers of our choice, are we really free? And then war came to our country. And life in our village changed, and nothing was as it had been. Soon, there was not enough food. Rama, share this bowl of soup with Sami. I didn't know then that Mama would go hungry. But we still had Mama's hugs and Jado's arms to hold us. Then the birds stopped singing, and people began to leave our village. First a trickle and then a stream across dusty fields under a burning sun, a stream driven by hope. Mothers, fathers, children seeking a better place, a better life. A river of strangers in search of a place to be free, to live and to laugh and to love again. In search of a place where bombs did not fall, where people did not die on their way to the market. A river of people in search of peace. At first, when our neighbors left, I didn't mind. I still had Papa and Mama and Jado and Sami. I still had friends. We waved goodbye, not knowing that they wouldn't come back. But then, when the bombs fell too close to our home, things changed. One day, Jado told Sami and me that it was time. Time to join the river of people. Time to leave all that we knew. That night, I lay in bed and cried because I knew I might never hear the crow of the rooster, the creak of the gate, the bleat of the goats, and I lay awake and listened to the wind, wondering if the moon rises in the same way in other places. Sami and I said goodbye to the flowers in our yard, to our goat, to our soil that we called home. And then we walked. We walked and walked and walked. I tried to match my steps to Jado's long strides. I tried to hold Mama's hand, but she carried blankets, a bundle of clothes. I carried only memories in my heart. We walked, sometimes alone, but mostly with others. Everyone fleeing the war, running away from the bombs. Papa carried little Sami and Ma and more on his back. When I grew so tired and cried, Papa told me we were walking towards a bright new future. We walked to the end of the earth, and when we reached it, there was a sea, and we set sail on waves of hope and prayer. I was frightened as the waves battered our little boat, and not everyone made it safely across. We said prayers for those whose journey ended at sea. When we arrived on land once again, Mama and Papa planted seeds to grow flowers to remember those who did not reach freedom. And on we walked, tired. I was so tired. My feet felt like the rocks on which we walked. My legs were trees rooted to the soil, but on we walked. But now we walked across lands free from war, free from guns and bombs, free from fear. Now we walked on hope. And at last we came to our future. New neighbors welcomed us with open arms. I heard their voices, but didn't understand their words. When I saw their smiles, I knew what the words meant. Stay, they said. Stay here with us. You will be safe now. No more war. And they shared what they had. Clothes, food, even a new doll. We have a new home now. A home with new sounds and new smells, with smiles and people who help. Will this always be home? Or will we go back one day? The lucky ones, they call us. New memories, new hopes, new dreams. Not of war, but of peace. We don't always know where our paths will take us, but we do know that we must fight for one another, and for peace, and for justice, and for a country that cares for all of its people. Times are changing. We are showing up for one another in wonderful ways. Thank you for caring for one another and for standing up for what's right.
What I'd like to do now is acknowledge and welcome those of you who are visiting us this morning. We invite you to type hello in the comment section and tell us your name and where you're from. And then we hope you'll join us after the service in coffee hour in our Fellowship Hall Zoom room. If you don't have the link to that, it will be posted in the comment section right now. And if you find this service to be useful or inspirational, hopefully both, please share the link with your friends and family. So welcome, everyone. We're so glad you're with us today. It's now time to take the offering. All funds collected today will go towards the building, program, and staffing costs here at QUUF. If you'd like to donate today, you can text the amount you'd like to give to the text number that's now at the bottom of your screen, or you can go to our website, quuuf.org, and click on the giving link, or you can simply mail a check to QUUF. We will now gratefully receive your offerings as we listen to Shelley Brown playing Purple Mountain by Scott Kosu. Thank you, Shelley. We now will share the joys and sorrows of this congregation. But first, we always remember that our joys and sorrows are only a fragment of the world's joys and sorrows. And thus, we always start by placing a stone for the larger community of life. Today, we place the first stone in honor of Pride Month. Now, normally, June would be a time of celebration, of coming out, and of dazzling parades. With this year's pandemic, however, it's a different sort of month. We can't be together to celebrate the recent Supreme Court decision, nor can we be together to commiserate the unprecedented assault on the LGBTQ community being waged by the Trump administration. So we place this first stone with both joy and sorrow in our hearts. And now we light a candle of sorrow for Jean Geet, who passed away this past Monday. You may recall that Jean had grown quite frail and had moved to New Zealand several months ago to be with her family there. Well, member Dixie Scott reports that Jean, who will be sorely missed, died peacefully in the company of that family. So we light this candle in honor of her gentle spirit and also to extend our love to her grieving friends and family. We have 3 anniversaries to celebrate today. Our first is a candle of joy for Jennifer and Len Taylor, who marked their 59th wedding anniversary on June 17th. They report that they are still friends and cannot fathom where all of these years have gone. Happy anniversary, Len and Jen. We also light a candle of joy for Penny Ritterbush and Kathleen Croston, who celebrated their 15th wedding anniversary this past Thursday. Happy anniversary, Penny and Kathy. We're so glad you two found each other. And now we light a candle of joy for Ann Weaver and Bobby Hasselbring, who will celebrate their 35th anniversary this Tuesday. We wish you many more happy years together, Ann and Bobby. We now want to light a candle of joy and welcome for Jim Cunnington, who just joined our congregation as a member. We are so glad, Jim, that you took this significant step. I know that I speak on behalf of many of us here in expressing our joy that you are now a full-fledged member of this community. We all look forward to getting to know you better, Jim. Welcome. And last, but not least, given that it's Father's Day today, we light a candle to all you dads out there, biological and otherwise. We celebrate you today. And now we place a final stone, holding in our hearts the joys and sorrows I've just shared, but also thinking of such joys and sorrows among us that are not expressed, but of no less importance. I invite you now into a moment of silence, which will be followed by a musical response. Our reading this morning is entitled Singularity, and it's by Marie Howe. Do you sometimes want to wake up in the morning to the singularity we once were, so compact that no one needed a bed or food or money? Nobody had to hide in the school bathroom or at home alone, pulling open the drawer where the pills are kept. For every atom belonging to me belongs to you. Remember, there was no nature, no them, no test to determine if the elephant grieves her calf or if the coral reef feels pain. Trashed oceans don't speak English or Farsi or French. What that we could wake up to what we were when we were ocean, and before that to when sky was earth and animal was energy and rock was liquid and stars were space and space was not at all nothing. Before we came to believe humans were so important, before this awful loneliness, can molecules recall it, what once was, before anything happened? No I, no we, no one, no was, no verb, no noun, only a tiny, tiny dot brimming with is, all, everything, home.
There is more love somewhere. There is more love somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more love somewhere. There is more hope somewhere. There is more hope somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more hope somewhere. There is more peace somewhere. There is more peace somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more peace somewhere. There is more love somewhere. There is more love somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more love somewhere.
I want to introduce you to our guest speaker today, the Reverend Beth Chronister from University Unitarian Church in Seattle. Beth is a lifelong UU, raised on the plains of Kansas. From her early church and youth group experiences, which emphasized social change and justice work, Beth studied social welfare and immigration in college. However, it wasn't until she was living far away from home and serving in the Peace Corps in Paraguay, South America, that she felt her call to the ministry. Upon returning to the States, Beth moved to Denver, Colorado, where she attended the Iliff School of Theology and began her ministry as the assistant minister at First Unitarian Society of Denver and the consulting minister at High Country UU Fellowship in Dillon, Colorado. Beth relocated to Seattle from Denver to begin working at University Unitarian Church as the assistant minister in the fall of 2016. Her primary responsibilities include pastoral care, supporting the social justice ministry there, and being a presence on Sunday mornings. In her non-church life, Beth is a lover of nature, dance, building community, playing cribbage, and exploring the world. Please join me in welcoming Beth Chronister.
Good morning, Quimper UU Fellowship. It is good to virtually join you on this day. My thanks to Reverend Kate Lohr for the invitation to join you from University Unitarian Church, where I serve as the assistant minister and minister of social justice and pastoral care. Kate was able to come and share from our pulpit just before the quarantine, and I count her as a friend and mentor in this work of justice ministry. So it is an honor to be here. The African-American spiritual Wade in the Water has been running through my head these last weeks of watching and participating in the protest against the public lynching of George Floyd under the knee of a white police officer in Minneapolis. The waters of this country indeed are troubled, and change like a mighty stream is running across the whole nation through cities as well as towns and suburbs, demanding racial justice in a country that has been anti-Black since its inception. Wade in the Water, this hymn has deep roots in American history. Its origins reach back into the centuries during which Black people were enslaved by white society through brutal means. It was sung by enslaved people as they worked in fields and dreamed of liberation. The verses of this spiritual recall the biblical story of Exodus, in which the Hebrews narrowly escaped their enslavement in Egypt by crossing the Red Sea, beginning their long journey toward freedom. Much like the song Follow the Drinking Gourd, it was encoded with guidance for those escaping chattel slavery, taught by Harriet Tubman to the people she led to freedom to walk through streams where they could not be tracked. Wade in the water. Wade in the water, children. God's gonna trouble the water. Throughout history, against the forces of oppression, there have been movements for liberation and active resistance to the systems that dehumanize. We are witnessing one of these liberatory movements as communities are gathering, crying out in grief and anger at the police killing of yet another Black person, and calling for transformation not only in policing, but in the systemic and interpersonal racism that is pervasive across society. The history of this country and how it is told is being called to account, and history is being made as we speak. The Black Lives Matter movement, birthed as a love letter to Black people in the aftermath of the acquittal of George Zimmerman for killing the young Trayvon Martin in his neighborhood, has been working for 7 years now to resist racist policing and to organize for a nation in which Black lives are treated as if they matter. The change in public opinion over these past weeks, which now overwhelmingly affirms the presence of racism and white privilege, comes by way of the work and leadership of this larger movement for Black lives, this movement for Black health, happiness, and possibility. Are we listening? In the midst of a pandemic that has laid bare racial disparities and who is most likely to die from coronavirus, and at a time in which the nation has seen just how quickly everything can change when there is motivation to do so. People are coming together, not only in the streets, but in their organizations and in their very own souls to demand transformation. Police funding is being cut and reallocated to community solutions and mental health. Statues of slave owners and Confederates are being brought down off of their pedestals, and experiments in beloved community are being practiced, such as on Capitol Hill in Seattle and the Autonomous Zone, where people are organizing teach-ins on racism and offering mutual care and community safety without police presence. My fervent prayer as a minister in this tradition and as a lifelong UU is that we don't sleep through this awakening, but that we dare wade in the water, joining our energies to the movements fighting for the realization of what Langston Hughes called a dream deferred. Within any religious tradition, there is a complicated inheritance of a combination of history, theology, and culture. This is particularly true for religions such as ours, whose history reaches back into Christianity. For just as Christianity has been used as a tool for liberation, Christianity and religion have also been used to justify domination, violence, and legitimize complicity over many centuries. Of course, one does not have to reach back centuries to find evidence of the ways our own religious tradition has been used both for liberation and for silencing the cries of the oppressed. This has felt very alive to me in recent weeks, showing up as a protest chaplain, marching with others in the movement for Black life. I try to be aware that I carry with me the best and worst of my tradition. I carry both the liberating message of a universal love that does not discriminate and the cultural norms of a community that is overwhelmingly white and privileged. I carry the histories of when our faith has engaged anti-racism and when we have prioritized white comfort and privilege over truth-telling and justice. Each day, each march, I face choices about what I will allow to guide me, about what gods I will worship. And so on this morning, I wish to offer you some of what has been brought into my own awareness of what within this faith can guide us in anti-racism and what also hinders us in this work. I am speaking as a white UU minister, and much of what I share is to speak to people who share my skin color. For as white people, we have our own work to do in order to join in multiracial solidarity to dismantle systemic racism and to challenge our own racist beliefs and behaviors. I am grateful to the many Black UUs and white anti-racist UUs who have helped expand my awareness so that I might come to understand the religious culture that has shaped me. For even as culture is ever present, it's difficult to see and name it, particularly as a privileged member within it. Whiteness as a racial construct and culture has been so pernicious and hard to change, in part because it pretends not to exist, even though it touches everything, from racial disparities in maternal mortality rates, to hiring practices, to who has access to the vote. As a Black African professor of mine in seminary told us, America is simultaneously obsessed with and in denial of race. As Unitarian Universalist, we are inheritors of our Universalist ancestors who proclaimed that no one falls outside of God's grace, that people are not inherently broken, nor are they broken into those who are saved and those who are damned. Universalists claimed that all people, no matter their identity or their beliefs, were worthy of love. This was religiously radical at its inception, and it is radical still today. However, in practice, and influenced by dominant culture, I see how this inheritance of universalism has often resulted in universalizing, which assumes sameness and denies or minimizes difference, thereby avoiding the natural conflicts that arise when people bring their different cultures and experiences into dialogue. In congregations that are primarily white, this universalizing often results in centering white experiences, white voices, white music, and worship traditions, and assuming that this speaks to all people. There's a common assumption that we are a colorblind community, when in truth, whiteness without interrogation is often what we offer, and people of color who do not fit into that paradigm are asked to conform or leave. Multiculturalism, what many UU congregations say they long for, cannot thrive in this environment where the needs of the dominant group are centered and other needs ignored. In contrast, authentic belonging relies on an openness and awareness of difference, abilities to sit with discomfort, and yes, abilities to engage in healthy conflict. Now, I know for many white people who were taught it was good to judge people as individuals rather than by their group identity, this might be difficult to accept. But to refuse to see difference is a denial about how those differences are treated in society, which is far from equal. To refuse to see difference is to not fully witness another person's reality. My own family has lived through both minimizing, universalizing, and accepting differences. I come from an interracial family, made so through birth and adoption. Growing up, my biracial brother was treated differently in the school and policing systems, and yet my family struggled to have conversations about our differences, about how race impacted each of us. We were taught that love was enough, and while I still believe that love is essential, it wasn't enough to create space for acknowledging the ways my brother and I were treated differently in society and in our extended family. It wasn't enough to acknowledge the pain and to do something about it. This space that we now have created as a family has come only through a maturation of that love, through speaking honestly and listening deeply, and by embracing our differences as well as what we share, what ties us together as a family. Reaching back into our transcendentalist ancestors who were passionate about the spiritual primacy of individual truth, there has been a prizing of the individual and individual freedom in this tradition. As a non-dogmatic tradition that encourages people to discover their own beliefs, we have provided a much-needed place for individuals to find their own truth and a sanctuary for people who felt harmed by the religious communities of their youth. However, this emphasis on the freedom of the individual above and sometimes against our shared religious purposes as a community has come at a cost. Too often we have failed to ask, what is this freedom for? What is our responsibility to work for freedom for others as if our own freedom depended on it? Is it our religious purpose solely for the sake of individuals, or are we called to something larger than ourselves? Are we called to collective liberation? Individualism is undeniably a part of UU culture, but we by no means have the monopoly on this ideology. It is the dominant ideology of our country. And much like universalizing, when everything is viewed through the ideology of individualism, it is difficult to see the structures beyond an individual's control that shape their life. When the media focuses on what a Black person was doing wrong, wearing a hoodie, running, selling cigarettes, sleeping, it fails to see the patterns of policing which pull over, arrest, and shoot unarmed Black and Indigenous people at much higher rates than whites. It dismisses our collective responsibility and lays the blame on the individual, lays the blame on the victim, or a few bad apple cops. This ideology of individualism also makes it incredibly threatening to receive feedback about one's own racism. This has been a difficult journey to learn to receive feedback about the impact of my own racism, my own racist assumptions and behaviors, and to receive this feedback as a white person and as a religious leader. It is so hard not to get defensive about my intentions, so easy to fall into shame about my own failings and ability to cause harm. It is only when I'm able to remind myself that I too am a product of a racist culture, that for 35 years now I have absorbed racist stories and stereotypes all around me, is when I realize and remember this, that I am able to receive that feedback as the gift it is. A gift from someone who loves me enough, who believes in my ability to learn, to tell me the truth. Telling the truth, hearing the truth about how racism lives in our nation, congregations, families, and our own hearts can feel painful, which is honest because these truths unveil long histories of pain, anger, grief, exclusion, loss, and the silencing or manipulating of truth. It unveils long histories of death. To quote James Baldwin from The Fire Next Time in a letter to his nephew, "This is the crime of which I accuse my country and my countrymen, and for which neither I nor time nor history will ever forgive them. That they have destroyed and are destroying hundreds of thousands of lives and do not know it and do not want to know it." The veil is being lifted. Truths are being told. Are we listening? For you can't have truth and reconciliation without truth. I would say that this is one of the spiritual gifts of Unitarian Universalism that we can choose to bring to anti-racism and working for liberation. The affirmation that truth continues to unfold and be revealed. Our tradition, not rooted in a specific revelation, finds truth in life, experience in relationships, as well as in science, art, and ancient wisdom. In order to show up to anti-racism as individuals and as a faith, we must listen to and search for truth, not just individual truth, but a plurality of truths about this nation, about racism, truths that increase awareness, debunk stereotypes, and expand the imagination. Where have you encountered truths that transformed how you think about race? Who have been the voices and what have been the experiences that challenged you to actively choose anti-racism over the belief that you could somehow be neutral? In my experience, this is a largely yet unrealized potential in our faith. to be a place where people are welcomed in their fullness, to embrace plurality, but not to stop there. For to really embrace plurality, we must also rededicate ourselves to our covenant, to take responsibility for one another's well-being, to work for justice where any group of people are systematically oppressed or excluded, including within our own faith communities, to not stop at individual freedom, but work in solidarity towards collective liberation. As Gwendolyn Brooks wrote, we are each other's harvest. We are each other's business. We are each other's magnitude and bond. History is being made. The invitation is to join in a growing multiracial Black-led movement that is sweeping the nation. The invitation is coming from the streets, but also from your own consciousness and from this religious tradition that calls us to make love and justice real. As a country and as a people, we carry a complicated inheritance. I pray that we choose that which leads towards liberation and give our communities to this work. Anti-racism is some of the most important work we will do as a religious tradition, and we will have no integrity if we do not do it. Dare to wade in the water. You will find good company there. Blessings of courage, hope, and faith to you.
Please join me in singing our closing song, Siyahamba. We are marching in the light of God. 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 We are marching, oh, we are marching in the light of God. We are marching, oh, we are marching in the light of God. We are singing 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 in the light of God. We are singing, oh, we are singing in the light of God. We are singing, oh, we are singing in the light of God.
Before we extinguish our chalice, I just want to note that next week, our speaker will be Carolyn Cohnlein, who is a member of our sister congregation in Bellingham, Washington. She'll be speaking on decluttering as a sacred act. Now, I have heard from many UUs that this is a stellar sermon, so I hope you'll join me in welcoming Carolyn to our online community next week. Now, let us extinguish our flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, the fire of commitment, or the power of transformation. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. After the service, I hope you'll join us in our virtual coffee hour. What you can expect is to be placed in a Zoom room with one of our coffee hour hosts who will facilitate personal check-ins as well as a reflection question on the sermon topic. I hope to see you there. But now, let us turn our attention to Shelley Brown, who will play our postlude. Sonantina, Opus 36, number 1, by Muzio Clementi.